Deborah Collier walked out of the Family Dollar store at 3:09, got into her van, and remained in her van in the parking lot for 10 minutes before leaving the parking lot and heading south on Georgia 15, Highway 441, US 23.
Okay, that's the video of Debbie Collier, the mom from Georgia, Athens, Georgia, which is where the University of Georgia is, who was found dead in the woods about an hour north of where she lives. It happened on a Saturday, game day. She was dressed in all red, ready for the Bulldogs game at 4 o'clock. I don't know if she ever saw it. I don't think she ever saw it. She was found dead 15 minutes south of that dollar store that she was driving away from. But it was strange, some of the circumstances. Like, why was she even there to begin with? Well, now we've got new video of her actually arriving at the dollar store, and this is at 2:55 p.m. You can see the spotlight. That is her van, SUV van, and I think we'll get to see her walk into the store. There she comes, pulling up. Doesn't like that parking spot. Let me get a closer spot. I do that all the time. Pulls in. Again, Family Dollar. I mean, nothing unusual about this except the fact that it's an hour north of her house. And there's like 15 other dollar stores she could have gone to. Why this dollar store? Why in this part of the state? There you can see she's dressed up. I live in Georgia. She's dressed for the game, folks. Maybe not to go to the game, but maybe to watch the game or listen to the game or meet some people who were going to watch the game. Doesn't make sense to me. Now, let's take a look at the timeline to remind you of everything. Timeline, very important in this case. And it all begins 2:17. Debbie Collier's vehicle is seen traveling northbound on Georgia 15, just north now of where her body is found at the crime scene. 2:55, that's the video you just saw, and then she gets out and she enters the Family Dollar store. She's in there for a little while. At 3:09, she is seen checking out and leaving the store. She bought a blue tarp, a red tote, a lighter. She bought some paper towels. Then at 3:09, she's in her car in the parking lot of the Family Dollar for about 10 minutes. Okay, so that's till 3:19. But at 3:17, this is so significant, a Venmo transaction with that cryptic message we've been talking about sent to Debbie's daughter, Amanda Bearden, for $2,300 and some odd dollars. I think it's $85. 3:19, her vehicle leaves the Family Dollar and heads south on Highway 15. Let's bring in our guests. Our investigators still with us. We need them tonight. Bobby Chacon and Trebor Randall. And joining me now in New York City, senior reporter for the U.S. Sun, Luke Kenton is with us. Luke, great to see you again tonight. Now that we've seen this video of her arriving, once again, tying that timeline together, it seems like she's by herself. There's no indication of anyone else in that video.
Yeah, it does certainly seem that way. You know, we have theorized before on this case, if somebody was perhaps in the back of the car, if that is the case, they have to have entered the car before she pulled into that parking lot, because what we can see from that surveillance camera is that nobody other than Debbie either enters or exits that car in the time that she's parked out front of the Family Dollar store. She kind of enters just after 3 p.m., appears to enter like down the side of a McDonald's chain. We don't know if she was in that McDonald's yet. I'm sure that's something police are looking into, but there doesn't seem to be anything overly suspicious in the build up to her entering that store. And when she's inside the store, as we've seen before, she seems calm and she seems normal.
Now, Luke, when it comes to the other people connected to Debbie, is there a clear picture yet that's been released by investigators about where everybody was that day, everyone else of significance in her life? You know, her husband, her daughter, her daughter's boyfriend.
Yeah, with Debbie's husband, Steve, he was actually at the game parking cars. He's accounted for between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. that day. Law enforcement sources have said that there's surveillance footage that supports that claim. As for Amanda's whereabouts, I'm not too sure. I'm not sure that's something that's been kind of discussed at length by law enforcement. But we know that she was among the first people to kind of raise the alarm about her mum's disappearance. That came roughly 2.5 hours after she received that suspicious Venmo payment. And that call was made by Debbie's husband, Steve, at his home around 6 p.m.
All right, Trebor Randall, this is your neck of the woods. This is Georgia. What are you thinking about this case? I mean, very strange circumstances. The Venmo message, the Venmo, they won't let me go. The place where she was found, and just the fact that she's an hour north of Athens on game day.
Vinny, from the very beginning, this seemed a little strange to me. I'll admit that to you, starting with the message. Again, having done this in work cases similar to this, I've never had a situation where my victim was able to send a text message to anyone if they've been kidnapped or taken or just before their murder. That was unusual to me. Usually you only see a phone call if, somebody's holding someone, as we mentioned earlier, for ransom and say, call this person, give them some instructions. Even more unusual, watching her in the store. There is no doubt in my mind that she was not under any type of duress or threat, because she just would not be able to hide that. I assure you, if someone was waiting in the car, for example, or, saying, hey, go into the store, buy these things, don't try anything fishy, right? Like they do in the movies, she would not have been able to remain that calm. However, maybe if somebody that she was familiar with asked her to stop and pick up items that will ultimately be, evidence at a crime scene, she would not have thought of that. You know what I mean? Such as a tarp. I may say, well, what are you going to do with that? But she would not have thought, or she wouldn't have been, hinked up at all if maybe somebody she had known had asked her to stop and just pick up some supplies for them. So from the very beginning, this case started off really, really strange.
Bobby Chacon, we just covered a case where we saw an abduction on video, and we saw how it all took place. We've got video here. I don't see an abduction, but that message is kind of strange. But the message seems to be sent from the parking lot, and I don't understand the wording of it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I agree that she doesn't look under duress at all in that store, and so I don't think she was under any kind of duress or threat when she was in that store. She exited the store, and then the text takes place. I would be leaning hard on the daughter to say, why did your mother send you this money? Is it your rent? Is it some kind of car payment? Why is your mother sending you this money? Because there is some reporting out there that says the daughter's boyfriend owed criminal fines and penalties in almost that same amount that the Venmo payment is for. And so that's the only connection that I've seen reported so far. But I'd be asking the daughter, what was this money for? Was it for your rent? Was it for your car payment? Why is your mother sending you this money? If she doesn't have a good explanation, I'd look a lot closer at her.
And Luke, what are we hearing from the daughter and the daughter's boyfriend? Are they publicly speaking about, where they were or what the Venmo transaction was about or anything along those lines?
After kind of this case became, the national interest story it is now, they were quite vocal for the first few days afterwards. Particularly Andrew Geigerich, who's Amanda's boyfriend, Debbie's daughter. He's spoken quite publicly. As to the Venmo transaction, they haven't really spoken much about, nor have they about their whereabouts. They did say that they'd last seen Debbie the day before she went missing. They said they went out for lunch with her, that she took them out for lunch. That is when they claimed to have last seen her, and I'm not sure if Amanda spoke to her mother on the phone in that time. They haven't specified, but they have been awfully quiet since then. We don't know in this case, who is being treated as a suspect and who isn't, but something that Andrew did say to the press is that he has been interrogated, as has Amanda. Their phones have been seized. And they said they feel as though they're being treated as suspects. We know they served a search warrant at their home 3 days after Debbie's body was found, and we know that they spent 6 hours at her home. What we don't know is what they found, if anything.
All right. Our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about something else that happened to Debbie prior to this, a car accident. That was the reason she was in this vehicle that wasn't hers. It was a rental. How that could potentially be connected to all this. Plus, coming up next hour. In Santa Fe County, New Mexico, Alec Baldwin shot and killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Her family sued for wrongful death. Now, that lawsuit has been settled and production will resume for the film, and you will never guess who the new executive producer will be.
I mean, I've had more people who have been kind and thoughtful and generous in spirit than I've had.
A woman is literally cooking breakfast for her kids, opens the front door, and is shot to death by a clown. People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
One little bizarre incident and story after another.
It was rumored that Sheila Keene and Michael Bourne were having an affair.
She killed my daughter, and he marries her.
Unbelievable.
A Clown at the Door, Sunday night, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV. 0433.
At this time, there is no evidence to suggest or support that this incident was related to a kidnapping or that this was a suicide.
And what they've also said in Harrison County is that they don't believe this is a serial killer either. So they think it's someone that knows the defendant or knew about the victim in this case. Fascinating stuff. We now know that Debbie's husband and daughter both called 911 when they realized that she was missing. But there was an additional call to 911 obtained by FoxNews.com from a woman identifying herself as Debbie's sister, Diane Shirley. Diane told the operator that she had information from her niece that could have something to do with Debbie's disappearance. Take a listen.
From my niece, she said that she was in an accident about a month ago, and she was, on the road. She was following this truck, and this truck lost a paint can, and the paint can hit my sister's car, and the paint went everywhere. And the driver was trying to convince my sister not to tell the cops that he was driving because he was out on parole, and there was, a stipulation to his parole that he couldn't drive.
Could that be connected to all of this in some way? Let's bring back in our guests, Bobby Chacon, Trabor Randall, our investigators, and Luke Kenton, senior reporter for U.S. Sun. Luke, do we know any other details about this accident?
Yeah, when that 911 call was first released, it certainly caused a bit of confusion. But in the days since then, we know that Debbie was involved in a similar accident as to what her sister describes in that call on April 30th. So some information has come out about the person that she was involved in the accident with. His name was Miguel Martinez. He was 48 years old, and he was allegedly driving without a license when the crash occurred. Some sort of metal item fell onto Debbie's car and caused some damage, but nobody was hurt. Miguel Martinez has got previous misdemeanors, allegedly for pulling an ex-girlfriend's hair and various other things. But there doesn't seem to be anything to suggest that he was actually on parole when that crash occurred. He had been on parole, but I believe it had expired at the time of that accident. There's also been no kind of indication from law enforcement that they're looking into that as a possibility, but who knows at this stage.
Bobby, what does your gut tell you on that one?
It tells me he probably wasn't involved. I mean, they would have, if there was more substantial connection, they would have made it by now, and they would have connected him to a parole violation, a potential parole violation that he did not want to go back to jail. I think if that was there, if there was any substance to that, they probably did look into it, follow those leads, and probably dismiss them.
Trabor, I want to get back to where she was. I can't get my head around it because of the timeline. She's an hour north of where she is, and she's 15 minutes away from the dollar store, but doesn't get there until 45 minutes later. Like, to me, the key to uncovering part of this is trying to understand why she was there to begin with and where she was just before she went to the dollar store, because she's on George 15, just 15 minutes away from there, from the dollar store, but it's not till 45 minutes later that she gets there.
I agree with you. That makes no sense. And timelines are incredibly important to our investigations when you have these mysteries that you've got to unravel. As we mentioned earlier, I think she was following specific instructions that were given to her. That cell phone evidence is going to be incredible. Undoubtedly, I would venture to say that is what gave them the probable cause they needed to search the daughter's residence, is what was on the cell phone. And you have to keep in mind, a lot of people do not understand that just because you delete messages and it's not physically located in the screen of your phone, it does not go away.
Not so loud, Trebor. The criminals might be listening tonight. Don't let them know that. Wow. So, Luke, the other part of this that I'm trying to understand, and is anyone connected to that area? There's a rehab that is close to where her truck was found. What do we know about that rehab, and was there any connection to anyone in Debbie's life?
So the rehab facility that was located nearby is I believe, a male-only facility. We don't know if there's any direct connection with this case with that facility, but we do know that drugs have come up a few times in this case. In one kind of domestic incident between Amanda and Andrew, that's Debbie's daughter, Amanda, from September last year, Andrew says to police he accuses Amanda of stealing money from him, $500 to $600 a month, to buy drugs, and then accuses her of possibly being on drugs at the time of the dispute. Again, we don't know if that's true, but that footage has been released. Also with Andrew, something that I uncovered this week, that his mum was actually sentenced to 30 years in jail last year for attempting to sell meth. So drugs and money have come up in this case lots of times, but there's nothing at the moment about what we know about this case to link anything to that facility. But it certainly is an interesting coincidence.
Absolutely is. And again, we will continue to follow all the developments in this case. Big thank you tonight to Luke Kenton from the U.S. Sun senior reporter, and of course our investigators tonight, Bobby Chacon and Trebor Randall. Thank you both so much. We'll see you again really, really soon, and hopefully there are more developments here and we can solve